Welcome to Rays of Hope, where inspiration meets possibilities. Join us on this journey as we explore videos that illuminate the path to positivity, resilience, and success. Ever catch yourself feeling uneasy about losing control or not being enough? That's your ego talking. The ego plays a critical part in how we see and navigate the world. It's our inner voice, shaping our self-image and driving many of our actions. But there's a shadow side to this. The ego harbors a deep-seated fear of annihilation, of being erased or forgotten. Understanding this fear is key. It roots many of our anxieties and reactions, often without us realizing it. By recognizing the ego's fear, we can better manage our responses and lead a more balanced life. Understanding the ego. The ego is an essential part of who we are. To fully comprehend its fear of annihilation, we need to start by understanding what the ego is and how it functions. Definition and origin of the ego. The ego is a concept that helps us define our self-identity. It's the part of our mind that organizes our thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Sigmund Freud, a famous psychologist, described the ego as a mediator between our primal desires, id, and our moralistic standards, superego. This balance helps us function in society. From an early age, the ego begins to form. Babies start with basic needs and instincts but slowly learn about themselves and the world around them. This learning shapes their ego. As children grow, they start identifying with certain traits and behaviors, building their self-concept. So, the ego is both shaped by and shapes our experiences and perceptions. Functions of the ego. The ego isn't just about who we think we are, it plays a crucial role in how we act and react. Let's explore its main functions, from childhood to adulthood, and its critical role in self-preservation. Mediator of reality, the ego helps us navigate the real world. It mediates between our desires and societal expectations. For example, a child might want to grab a toy from another kid, but the ego helps them understand why that's not acceptable. Builder of self-identity. During childhood, the ego starts to form a sense of self. Through interactions with parents, teachers, and peers, the child learns what traits and behaviors are praised or discouraged. This helps in forming a coherent self-identity. Self-preservation. One of the ego's main functions is to keep us safe. It triggers our fight or flight response when we face danger. The ego also works to protect our self-esteem. It does this by feeding us positive self-talk and sometimes downplaying our mistakes to maintain our mental well-being. Decision-making. The ego plays a key role in making decisions. It evaluates situations based on previous experiences and current desires. This process helps us make choices that align with our self-concept and societal norms. Understanding these functions helps us see why the ego clings to its identity and fears annihilation. It's like a protective shield. When that shield feels threatened, our ego reacts defensively, often causing anxiety or fear. By grasping the ego's definition and its roles, we can start to see how deeply it's woven into our lives. This understanding is a step towards managing its fears and living a more balanced existence. The concept of ego annihilation. The idea of ego annihilation can seem scary at first. It challenges our sense of self and can make us feel vulnerable. However, understanding it can lead to personal growth and inner peace. Let's take a closer look at what ego annihilation is and its perspectives from both psychology and philosophy. What is ego annihilation? Ego annihilation refers to the experience of losing one's sense of self. This isn't about physical death but rather a deep shift in perception. When we talk about ego annihilation, we mean a state where the boundaries of the self dissolve. It's as if the I that navigates our daily life takes a backseat. Think of a drop of water merging into the ocean. The drop loses its form but still exists within the larger body of water. Similarly, in ego annihilation, our sense of individual self merges with something greater, be it consciousness, existence, or the universe. Common experiences of ego annihilation. Meditation. Individuals often aim to quiet the ego to reach a state of inner peace. Psychedelic experiences. Certain substances can temporarily dissolve the ego, leading to profound insights. Near-death experiences. Some people report a loss of self during moments close to death, followed by a sense of unity. While the idea of losing our distinct self can be unsettling, many who have experienced it describe it as liberating and transformative. Psychological and philosophical perspectives. Both psychology and philosophy offer valuable insights into ego annihilation. Each field helps us understand its significance and impact on our lives. Psychological perspective. Psychologists often see the ego as a crucial part of our mental apparatus. It helps us navigate reality and maintain our identity. Ego annihilation can be seen as a way to break free from rigid, destructive patterns of thought and behavior. Carl Jung spoke about the process of individuation, where one transcends the ego to integrate the self fully. This process involves facing the shadow aspects of ourselves and can feel like ego death. Mindfulness and therapy. Practices focused on mindfulness encourage people to observe their thoughts without attachment. This can weaken the ego's grip and lead to reduced anxiety and greater emotional resilience. Philosophical perspective. Philosophically, ego annihilation is often linked to spiritual enlightenment and deeper understanding. Eastern philosophies. Traditions like Buddhism emphasize the dissolution of the ego as a path to enlightenment. The idea is to transcend the self and realize interconnectedness with all things. Western thought. Some Western philosophers, like Soren Kierkegaard, discuss the leap of faith, where one abandons the self to embrace a higher existential reality. Both perspectives show that while ego annihilation can be daunting, it's often seen as a path to greater freedom and understanding. Embracing this concept helps in shedding our fears, leading us toward a more connected and harmonious existence. Understanding ego annihilation isn't about losing ourselves completely. It's about gaining insight into the bigger picture. By recognizing the transient nature of the ego, we can approach life more openly and authentically. The ego's fear mechanisms. The ego's fear of annihilation is a profound element that drives many of our thoughts and actions. At its core, the ego is about survival, both physical and psychological. When it feels threatened, it deploys various mechanisms to protect itself. Defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms are psychological strategies used by the ego to guard against feelings of anxiety and to maintain self-esteem. Here are some common ones. Denial. This is the ego's way of refusing to accept reality. By denying a threatening situation, we can avoid dealing with the pain it might cause. Imagine ignoring a split in a relationship because admitting it would hurt too much. Projection. In this mechanism, individuals attribute their unwanted feelings to others. If someone feels insecure, they might accuse others of being insecure instead. It's a way of deflecting internal conflict to the external world. Rationalization. This involves creating false but plausible excuses to justify unacceptable behavior. For example, someone might argue that they skipped a friend's party because they had work, not because they felt socially awkward. Repression. This is the process of pushing distressing memories or feelings out of the conscious mind. A person might forget a traumatic event but still display behaviors tied to that event. Understanding these mechanisms helps us recognize that the ego uses them instinctively to fend off threats. By identifying when we use these defenses, we can start addressing the underlying fears that trigger them. Behavioral patterns. The ego's fear doesn't just stay in the mind, it flows into our behaviors. Here are some common behaviors that arise from the ego's fear of annihilation. Resistance to change. The ego thrives on stability and control. Any disruption feels like a threat. That's why we often resist change, even if it's beneficial. For instance, staying in an unfulfilling job or relationship because the unknown is scarier than discomfort. Denial. Related to the defense mechanism, denial as a behavior means actively ignoring or rejecting truths. A person might deny needing help or refuse to see their own flaws to protect their self-esteem. Thank you for watching part 1 of The Ego's Fear of Annihilation, Understanding and Overcoming It. Stay tuned for part 2. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to stay tuned for more videos that spark hope and empowerment. Thank you for watching.